Hello guys, I'm using my new webcam. Don't ask me the hassle I went through for this. If this screen looks dark, that's because it's the way I like it. I want to talk to you about the limitations of artificial intelligence, GROK. It's a long story, but before this I had a very cheap camera. I had no option at the time, and the background noise was horrible. So I found a program, an artificial intelligence program, which removes background noise, but it's very inefficient. Well, it does that, but it screws up the speech as well. So I'd have to. I don't know. This is irrelevant, but I'll say that I looked at the Chat GPT. I've never used it, and there's a bit of a scandal there about its bias. It's saying nice things about Kamala Harris and horrible things about Donald Trump. I'm using GROK now, which is Elon Musk's program, so I'm assuming it isn't biased. On the 14th, I ran several phrases through GROK, and frankly, I'm not satisfied with what I found. I want to go through one, two, just three of them. The first question I put to it was, is Satpal Ram guilty? The simple answer is yes. Satpal Ram murdered a man in a restaurant in November 1986. Stabbed him twice with a flick knife and a legal weapon, gloated over him as he lay dying, then fled the crime scene with the murder weapon still in his hand. I set up a website about this case 2 decades or more ago, so you'll find that, and I've made a speech about him, and I've uploaded some documentation to the Internet Archive as well. Satpal Ram is a murderer. GROK 2 replies with 15 web pages, or it says 15 web pages. The question of Satpal Ram's guilt is complex and has been highly debated. It isn't complex. Here's an overview based on available information, not all the available information, I should stress. Arguments for guilt. Satpal Ram was convicted of murder in 1987 for the death of Clark Pierce. The conviction was upheld by the Court of Appeal in 1989, which suggests that at the time there was sufficient legal evidence to support the guilty verdict. That is probably lifted from my Satpal Ram website, because I've found the transcript of his failed appeal, his 1989 appeal, which was rejected at the leave stage. I found that in the Supreme Court library, in the bottom drawer of a desk, in the bottom drawer of a cabinet. I added it to the site. Later, I purchased the transcript of his unsuccessful 1995 appeal, which was dismissed in a strongly worded judgment by Lord Justice Beldam. Arguments for innocence or miscarriage of justice. Ram supporters argue that he acted in self-defence. Yes. Some people argue that the moon is made of green cheese or the earth is flat. They're wrong too. According to various reports, the incident began with racial abuse directed at Ram and his friends, escalating when Pierce attacked Ram with a broken glass. Absolute rubbish. Ram's use of a knife was claimed to be in response to this attack, which led to Pierce's death. The narrative from supporters suggests a biased judicial process, including inadequate legal representation and the absence of an interpreter for a key Bengali-speaking witness. This is again a distortion. Ram supporters can say whatever they like, and they do. Nothing biased about the judicial process. No illegal representation. He was represented by Douglas Draycott QC, who was actually a recorder, and the absence of an interpreter for a key Bengali-speaking witness. This is garbage. The witness was Abdul Mozamil, was a waiter in the restaurant, and the evidence he gave was not very conducive to Ram's version of events. After serving 15 years, Ram was released on licence after a ruling by the European Court of Human Rights, which highlighted issues with his case, particularly around the Home Secretary's power to overrule parole recommendations. This fueled arguments that his conviction might have been a miscarriage of justice due to systemic racism or procedural errors. Complete nonsense. What happened was that Jack Straw, who was then the Home Secretary, looked at the papers and blocked his release. Ram was serving a life sentence and he behaved very badly in prison, very badly. He'd been moved around all over the place because of that. And I mean, the release on licence is a privilege, not a right. The European Court of Human Rights, so-called, ruled that Straw, the Home Secretary, had acted unlawfully. Well, he did the right thing, but that has nothing to do with Ram's conviction, and how that could be a miscarriage of justice is complete nonsense on that account. Post-conviction developments. After his release, Ram continued to fight to clear his name, indicating ongoing controversy around his case. Well, sort of. The support from public figures and bands like Asian Dub Foundation has kept the case in the public eye. Not anymore, it hasn't. Suggesting doubts about the original conviction. No, absolutely no. Just because celebrities, including very minor celebrities, have lobbied for this guy, don't undermine his conviction, especially where they're spouting lies, perhaps innocently. Conclusion. The legal system found Satpal Ram guilty of murder, but the case has been mired in controversy due to claims of self-defence, racial bias and judicial process failures. No, these are lies, absolute lies. And it finishes, this duality reflects the complexity of legal guilt versus perceived justice, where the legal verdict does not necessarily end the social or moral debate about culpability. No mention here of what actually happened after Ram was released. He'd been out for about a year when he was called to prison. He was arrested the following year in London, during the course of which he assaulted 2 police officers. And he was back in prison for a number of years and released again, but without the public fanfare this time. So that is complete rubbish, absolute rubbish. I will say that all my stuff is available on the web, but not on Wikipedia, because I've added stuff, especially about the post-relief. I apologise for the creaking desk. The post-conviction, the post-release developments about his rearrest and back to prison, and they've deleted it. They don't want anything to do with it. It's completely outrageous. So that is Satpal Ram. Right, number 2 is Mumia Abu-Jamal, another murderer. I've written about this case, nothing like as much as I have about Ram, and I certainly haven't met, with Ram I met the victim's sister, who saw her brother murdered, and her husband, who was also in the restaurant when the murder happened, and I've met her family, basically. And I've corresponded with her over the years. But Abu-Jamal, I've written stuff about it. I've seen videos. Okay, GROK 2, 15 posts, 15 web pages. The question of Mumia Abu-Jamal's guilt remains highly controversial and has been debated for decades. Sound familiar? Here are some key points from both perspectives. Arguments for guilt. Mumia Abu-Jamal was convicted in 1982 for the murder of Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. Eyewitness testimony, including from individuals who claimed to have seen the shooting, was pivotal in the trial leading to his conviction. Yes. Physical evidence, such as the .38 caliber revolver found at the scene registered to Abu-Jamal, was presented by the prosecution. Despite discrepancies regarding bullet calibers, this was used to support the case against him. What discrepancies? There were no discrepancies. Nonsense. Some argue that the judicial process, including appeals and reviews, has upheld his conviction, suggesting a level of confirmation of his guilt by the legal system. Well, yeah. It's a bit like saying the mathematician concluded that 2 + 2 = 4. He's upholding. I mean, it's ludicrous. Arguments for innocence. Supporters and legal teams of Abu-Jamal have consistently claimed that he did not receive a fair trial. Well, the faults for the trial were entirely his fault. They cite issues including racial bias in jury selection, complete nonsense again, prosecutorial misconduct and judicial prejudice. No. For instance, allegations have been made that Judge Albert Sabo, who presided over the trial, expressed a desire to help them find the nigger, including race, indicating racial bias. That is a completely fabricated quote. They've told all sorts of lies over the years. New evidence has emerged suggesting that some witnesses might have been coerced or bribed, and there were procedural errors in the trial, like the exclusion of black jurors, which could have impacted the trial's outcome. This is again what new evidence? There's no new evidence. There's new lies and old lies, old beer and new bottles. Amnesty International has acknowledged that numerous aspects of the case did not meet international standards for fair legal proceedings, though they do not take a stance on guilt or innocence. Amnesty International is talking out of its backside. Given these points, the case is complex, with significant debate over the integrity of the judicial process. No! It finishes, ultimately determining guilt is a legal decision, and despite numerous appeals, Abu-Jamal's conviction has been upheld, though his sentence was commuted from death to life imprisonment without parole. However, the debate over his guilt continues to be fuelled by new evidence, legal arguments and public advocacy. By lies, more lies, and even more lies. What actually happened was that Abu-Jamal had been a radio journalist, but he lost his job because he couldn't distinguish between reporting and advocacy. He was driving a cab to earn a living. At 4 a.m, he witnessed an arrest. His brother, William Cook, was being arrested by Officer Faulkner. Abu-Jamal ran over to where the struggle was taking place, shot Faulkner in the back. Faulkner fell to the ground, pulled out his revolver and put a bullet in Abu-Jamal's chest. Abu-Jamal then stood over Faulkner and blew his head off, basically. And that is what happened. At his trial, he didn't take a stand. He disrupted the proceedings so much that it really got on the judge's nerves. And he acted as his own advocate, which, a man who argues his own case is a fool for a client. And there was a backup attorney. It was a ludicrous case. It was absolutely 100% guilty. All this stuff about race is just garbage. And now we come to number 3. This one is very interesting. Did Jerry Gable tell the truth about the 1960s synagogue arsons? 15 web pages again. The question of whether Jerry Gable told the truth about the 1960s synagogue arsons is complex and involves contentious historical claims. Here's a balanced examination based on available sources. No, it isn't complex. It's Gable lying, period. Jerry Gable, a prominent figure in anti-fascist activism and the long-time editor of Searchlight magazine, has been accused by some sources of fabricating or exaggerating his role in exposing the perpetrators of the synagogue arsons during the 1960s. Gable claims to have been instrumental in bringing the culprits to justice, often highlighting his work with the 62 Group, an anti-fascist organisation formed to combat neo-Nazi activities in the UK. Gable had no role at all in that. Complete lies. Counter-narratives. Alexander Barron's revisionist account. Alexander Barron, in his works like A Revisionist History of the 1960 Synagogue Arsons, argues that Gable's narrative is misleading or outright false. Barron suggests that Gable and his associates might have exploited these incidents for their anti-fascist agenda, potentially inflating their involvement or even fabricating connections to far-right groups. Barron points out discrepancies in Gable's accounts and questions the veracity of his claims about solving these crimes. Legal and historical documents. Some documents from the Public Record Office are cited by Barron and produced by Barron after the files were declassified. Indicate the narrative around the arsons might be more nuanced than Gable's portrayal. There are mentions of other individuals like Harry Bidney, whose role in these events is debated, with allegations of Gable taking undue credit for Bidney's work. I could go on. Critical examination, lack of conclusive evidence. Conclusion. Given the conflicting accounts and the nature of the sources, it's challenging to ascertain with certainty whether Gable told the truth about 1960s synagogue arsons. No, it isn't at all. In summary, the truth about Jerry Gable's involvement in the synagogue arsons of the 1960s is mired in controversy, with both sides presenting persuasive but partisan arguments. Without additional objective historical evidence, a definitive answer remains elusive. Mine is objective, historical, right? In Searchlight magazine in 1984, after Harry Bidney died, Jerry Gable claimed that Bidney had brought the synagogue arsonists to book. No. Well, what happened was that one of the members of there were two gangs. Paul Jukes was appearing in court for possessing a knife, an offensive weapon or something. And he recognised Bidney outside the court and walked up to him and said, basically he was fed up with playing Nazis. And Bidney took Dukes to the police, but not before the 62 group had tried to frame Colin Jordan as the mastermind behind the fires. Colin Jordan was Britain's Nazi leader. What the real mastermind was Jordan's rabidly anti-Semitic wife, Françoise Dior. There were 3 trials, the last of her, in which she was given an 18-month sentence. It's all on the website anyway. I'll put a link to it below. Now, in 1997, Gable gave an interview to the Jewish Chronicle in which he claimed that he had brought the arsonists to book, and that a yeshiva student had died as a result of one of the attacks. No. It took me ages to research this, but what happened was there was a fire in 1964 at the Masifta Talmudical College in Casino Road, Stamford Hill, the heart of Jewish London. That fire was accidental. It was probably bad wiring or something. Wolf Katz died in the fire. Judah Gottesman survived. He jumped from an upper floor window and hurt his leg rather badly. I spoke to him. I was given his number by Rabbi Goldstein. I spoke to him. It was a shock in Manchester. Well, I know he might be dead by now, but or retired at least. It was a shock at working in Manchester, and that fire was a total accident. What Gable did, quite cynically, was he tacked on this accidental fire to his imaginary successful investigation of the arsons, in which no one was killed. When Colin Jordan died, Gable was commissioned to write an obituary for him, and he parroted this lie. I think I could say I humiliated Gable here, because eventually I had the bright idea of writing to the police. I wrote to New Scotland Yard, and I'll put a link to the reply I received on down below. I'll upload it to the Internet Archive. The police went to visit Gable. I spoke to him, and he admitted he had nothing to say, nothing to add. He knew nothing about the fire. It was the same when he was sued for libel by the late Maurice Riley. He and Ray Hill appeared together, and neither of them testified. He had nothing to say. When he's parroting rubbish to the gullible, including Parliament, he's full of it. But under oath, or when the chips are down, he has nothing to say. Anyway, that is GROK. What GROK makes of 3 controversies. I did ask a 4th question. I said, who is the loveliest woman in creation? And when it didn't say Candice Night, I lost all faith in GROK. Okay, that is my assessment of artificial intelligence to date. This is a large language model. It needs to put even more information into it, and it needs to learn to assess. Not all claims are equally valid. The moon is made of green cheese isn't as valid as the moon is like not made of green cheese. Okay, so I hope you enjoy that. Comments if you like. Anyone who likes to support my work, links are below. And as I've spent bundles of money over the past few weeks, totally unrelated to Christmas, most of it down the toilet, I will be happy to receive any donations at all.